Mangwanani Malalepo Vukenjani Class Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Bedi and Anna Raisa Koyo, prepared to engage with the content.
Now, in the top stories this Wednesday, modern slavery gangmasters exploit care worker shortage. Slow disaster, Indonesian in sinking village forced to adapt, and outrage in Nigeria over Lagos mass burial. You can follow our show, which is AGM, on 1up2.com or DSTV 285, as well as GoTV 25 in Namibia. It's Wednesday, that means Ari Hochada is on today's episode, bringing us the news making waves in South Africa. We'll be right back with the top stories after the break.
Welcome to Active Kids, a daily TV show that sparks creativity, learning, and fun for young minds. With exciting activities and lessons, Active Kids inspires curiosity and a love for learning.
New face to the 150.
The perfect mix of play and education. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune into Active Kids on NTV every weekday at 10 o'clock and let the adventure begin.
Modern slavery gangmasters exploit care worker shortage. The number of modern slavery cases reported within the UK care industry has more than doubled in the past years. There are 109 potential victims exploited for personal or financial gain between January and March, twice as much as the same period in 2022. BBC File on 4 obtained the figures from the government-approved anti-slavery helpline run by Charity Unseen. Investigators trying to protect workers from being exploited say the care industry is now a top priority. The Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority, whose role is to protect workers from labor exploitation across the UK, told us there were 17 ongoing care sector investigations and that it was looking at a more than 300 pieces of intelligence. Unseen says the rise in the calls about the care sector in the past 12 months is because of the government has made it easier for overseas social care staff to work in the UK.
Right now, more than 200 people have stayed in one of Indonesia's fastest sinking areas, which has turned from a landscape of lush rice paddies into a network of boardwalks and canoes in an alarming sign of how climate change could upend coastal communities everywhere. Tubus local residents' lives have been drastically altered by rising sea levels, coastal erosion and excessive groundwater extraction making the land sink. The coastline has also been left vulnerable to floods after locals cut down mangroves for fishing ponds in the 1990s. Water has since reached 5 kilometers inland around Timbosloko and the surrounding Demak region. Now, this is according to Denny Nugroho Sigianto, professor at Diponegoro University.
In our next story, outrage in Nigeria over Lagos mass burial. There is outrage in Nigeria after a leaked memo showed the Lagos state government had approved 777,000 for a mass burial of 103 people who have been linked to the historic 2020 NSAS protests against police brutality. Excuse me. Some Nigerians have expressed shock and said the victims scheduled to be buried were demonstrators allegedly killed by the army at the Lekki toll gate shooting on the 20th of October during the protest. The number of those who died has long been a source of controversy in Nigeria, with the military initially denying anyone had been killed. However, a judicial panel of inquiry has reported that 9 protesters were killed and 4 presumed dead. The government denies the 103 bodies are from the Lekki incident, describing such interpretations as misleading.
Now, the Botswana Directorate of Intelligence and Security said it detained the editor and journalist of Megi newspaper because of reasonable suspicion, but it regrets the development. This was after the Botswana Editors Forum and the Botswana chapter of the Media Institute of Southern Africa engaged the spy organization over the arrest of editor Raida Gabatuse and senior reporter Innocent Setlawa a few hours before the paper's Thursday deadline. Now, the Directorate carried out the said investigation on reasonable suspicion that the persons in question had conducted themselves in contravention of Intelligence and Security Services Act 2008, the DIS said. The two journalists were released without any charges laid in the early hours of Friday from an undisclosed location, but their phones and laptops were confiscated by the DIS. The DIS said it was not its intention to appear as if it were interfering with media freedom, as the situation turned out to be.
In our next story, Nigeria to recover 150 million euros from Ibori fraud. A British court has ordered a former politician and his accomplices convicted of fraud and money laundering to return 150 million euros to Nigeria. Investigators announced on Monday he had been convicted after pleading guilty in a 50 million euro fraud case, but following a forfeiture hearing at the Southwark Crown Court in London, a judge ordered him to repay more than 101.5 million euros, Britain's crime agency said in a statement on Monday. According to NCA, the fraudulent profit attributed to James Ibori amounts to nearly 116 million euros. If he does not pay his dues, he faces an additional 8 years in prison, according to NCA. His UK-based lawyer Badresh Babdul Kohil, who had been sentenced to 10 years in prison, was meanwhile ordered to repay more than 28 million euros. He has 6 months to remedy his sum, failing which he risks 6 years in prison.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa. Good morning. Now, BRICS summit has been on the tips of our tongues for a very long time. We know Vladimir Putin will not be attending in person, and thus analysts are now asking the question, can BRICS build Africa economically? We'll be looking at that and more stories with Outrage.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Well, the global world seems to have turned into prom night, and Africa is the prettiest date you can take. And thus Russia and the US continue to court us, and the latest efforts, of course, are coming from Russia. Analysts are wondering if there will be any benefits from Africa, for Africa rather, in this collaboration and more. So, Outrage, take us into BRICS and more.
Yes, indeed, Ashwin. Yes, the band is getting ready to play in that prom. So there's lots of music around. There's some good music, some challenging music. But the reality is it's BRICS coming up in August. We know what happened there. President Putin won't be in Johannesburg for that. But there's also another initiative that's on its way, 28th of July. It is the Russia-Africa Summit that is in St. Petersburg. And it will be 49 African countries that will be there represented. And that is opportunity also for, obviously, for Russia to strengthen ties and relationships with African countries. At the moment, what's in the news is that the Black Sea trade agreement between Russia and Ukraine, Russia pulled out of that one. It came from July last year. It is to do with a grain export of Ukraine. So it was agreement between Turkey, United Nations, and Russia that Ukraine can, from their southern port, export grain. But now Russia has pulled out of that. About 32 million tons that's been exported. But a new statement made by Russia said that Africa don't have to worry. Russia do have enough grain to supply to Africa. So there's lots of initiatives. But just the reality of this, just briefly, is that the previous time the Russia-Africa Summit was 2019, President Putin promised to double the investment and trade to Africa to $40 billion US, because of Ukraine, obviously, as well, and a little bit of the COVID as well. It is down to 14 billion. So that is a challenge at the moment, but we'll see how that happens. That's the new developments. It is Russia-Africa Summit coming up 28th July. And like you said, the prom and the music is on.
All right, Ari, now in your next story, we understand that South Africa is still trying to extradite the Guptas, according to the Ministry of Justice. Tell us about this.
Yes, I'm afraid there's no prom and no ban definitely on this one. It has been quite embarrassing actually for South Africa. It is also been proven that also the National Prosecuting Authorities have not got all their legal arguments in place. But the biggest change here is that Mr. Lamola, he gave feedback in Parliament. He said that there's good working relationship between the UAE and South Africa to have the Guptas extradited. But the reality is that it didn't mention to Parliament is that the UAE, they informed South Africa that they have no idea where the Guptas are. So that's the first problem. Second problem is that the Guptas got they call it Vanuatu citizenship. That is a small island in the South Pacific nation. And you can get that by investments you made into the country. Key for that is the Guptas did that because South Africa don't have an extradition agreement with Vanuatu. So South Africa do have massive problems to get the Guptas to South Africa because of this as well. So it is just the beginning, but I think there's lots of challenges for Minister Lamola to get that right.
All right, Ari, in your next story, bitter news as sugar prices continue to go up. Please expand on that.
Yes, year on year, it went up by 16.4% in South Africa. That is from June last year to June this year. Globally, it's up 42%. So that's because of shortages of sugar. And also locally in South Africa, there's a big challenge with a big component, Tongaat Hewlett, one of the best-known sugar manufacturers in South Africa. They in business rescue at the moment. So everybody's paying more for sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, up plus minus 17%. So that's got an effect on many products as well. Maybe that will also help us to lose a bit of weight, maybe if we buy less of all those nice things. But chocolate's up 16.2%. But there's also a challenge, obviously, with rice, with India saying they're not going to export rice to the rest of the world as well. So sugar is a challenge, rice is a challenge. Seems like grain is a problem with what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. So we hope that things will sort out in the world of food very soon at least.
All right, Ari, and finally, the 2023 Women's Netball World Cup starts in Cape Town tomorrow, with host South Africa motivated to challenge the leading international netball nations. Tell us about this.
Yes, it's a big event. It's the 16th time the World Cup will be hosted, and the first time for South Africa. South Africa being a lot more competitive than previous years. Difficult to beat Australia, New Zealand, and England. New Zealand, defending champions, they will open the floor, the first game 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and so that will be the first game South Africa play against Wales tomorrow. Opening ceremony at 4 p.m. Then South Africa also play against Jamaica and Sri Lanka on Saturday and Sunday. So exciting tournament on their way. Nice for Cape Town to host that big elite tournament, and hopefully South Africa can do well. Also Zimbabwe playing it tomorrow against Australia. Tough opening game for them. So Malawi and Uganda also in the tournament for Africa. So hopefully African teams will do well in the Women's Netball World Cup 2023.
You know, I'm trying to replay if you also said if it was a tough opening for South Africa or if that was just for Zimbabwe. And we'll discuss it a little later. Thank you for bringing us the news stories from the Rainbow Nation.
Yes, big pleasure. A tough one for South Africa against Wales, definitely. So it's going to be tough all over, but we can take them on this time.
I
Hopefully,
think so.
imagine Zimbabwe can beat Australia. Would that not be a surprise of the year? So
That would be a
hopefully they can do
fantastic one, and if you can swing that over to cricket as well, I'll take all the blessings as they come. That was Ari Hogan, making sure we stay informed about what's happening in and around South Africa. Now it's time to figure out what's happening in and around your particular area with regards to the weather.
Here are the economic news proudly brought to you by Bank Windhoek. Mozambique hopes to exit FATF grey list by H1 2024. The Mozambican government expects the country to exit the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force by the first half of 2024, pointing out that it has made enormous progress towards the removal of this negative classification. What we are going to do this year is to demonstrate to FATF that both in terms of compliance and in terms of effectiveness, we have already made enormous progress, and in the next session in March or April 2024, oh yes, the window will open for the removal of the name of Mozambique from the grey list.
Now, moving on, Kagera Sugar Limited has said its acquisition of assets of the South Africa-based agri-business firm Tongaat Hulett Limited is part of its strategic expansion in Africa. The acquisition, according to THL, will comprise the complete sugar division in South Africa and investments in Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Botswana. Without stating the value of the acquisition, Kagera Sugar Managing Director Nasor Save said the transaction is in line with their expansion strategy and its vision of becoming a leading sugar producer on the continent. Safe was quoted saying that as a company, they have been committed to investing significantly in the operations to modernize the plants and expand them to increase production and efficiencies. That brings us to the end of our economic news stories. We'll head into the economic indicators just before the sport.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with entertainment. Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, and starting off with Soccer World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. It's a Women's World Cup currently being played there, and not a good result for co-host New Zealand. It's New Zealand that lost against the Philippines. That was a big surprise after New Zealand won their opening game against Norway, but it was the Philippines that scored their first ever win at any World Cup, and it was in the 24th minute. It was Serena Bolden that scored for the Philippines for the 1-0 victory that was played in Wellington. It was co-host New Zealand that lost a chance to qualify for the knockout phases of the World Cup. If they've beaten the Philippines, they would have gone through to the knockout phases, but now they need to play against Switzerland also now and beat Switzerland to qualify for the knockout phases. And it was early in the tournament that Switzerland beat Philippines by 2-0. The next game related to an African team playing in the tournament will be on Wednesday, and that is when Zambia play against Spain. A difficult game for them after they lost 5-0 against Japan. And staying with soccer news, that is transfer news in the men's soccer world at the moment, and it's the Saudi Pro League that continue to sign high-profile players, or look to sign high-profile players to join the league in Saudi Arabia. And the latest is Al Hilal, and they're making a massive offer, or about to make a massive offer, for Kylian Mbappe. That is the French international and also the captain of the France team, the 24-year-old, currently playing for PSG, or Paris Saint-Germain. And it was a PSG that gave the clear for him to negotiate with the club Al Hilal, and it is an eye-watering 260 million euros that is offered for Kylian Mbappe. Apparently that is what is been speculated, and if that is the case, it will be a new world record. The highest money paid ever in a transfer was for Neymar, the Brazilian striker, and that was way back in 2017 when PSG paid 200 million euros for him to join from Barcelona to PSG. But at the moment, it's just offers being made. It seems like it is a reality, so it might be that 260 million euros could be paid for Kylian Mbappe to join the club Al Hilal in the Saudi Arabian Pro League. And continuing international sports news with cycling news, it is a Tour de France for women, the Tour de France Femme, that continues. It was stage 2, and the winner there was Lehane Lippert. She's from Germany. That was a sprint finish to the end. She just beat Lotte Kopecky. She's from Belgium. She won the first stage on the opening stage on Sunday, and in third position was Sylvia Persico, and in fourth position South African Ashley Moolman-Pasio. So it was Lehane Lippert of Germany that survived the 152 kilometers as the winner. There was rain and lots of hills to go over in the stage, but she won in 4 hours, 13 minutes and 43 seconds. In the overall standings at the moment, it is Lotte Kopecky that remain in the lead after winning the first stage quite comfortably. So total combined time at the moment is 7 hours, 17 minutes and 36 seconds. She's 49 seconds ahead of Lehane Lippert, that moves into second place now. And in third position now is South African Ashley Moolman-Pasio. She's 59 seconds behind the leader. The third stage will be 147 kilometers, and the tour finishes, it will be 8 stages, and it finishes on Sunday. To close off international sports news, it's tennis news, and it's news from the Canadian Open tennis tournament in Toronto that will start on the 7th of August. And news from the organizers is that Novak Djokovic, he announced that he will not be able to play in the tournament, and his management announced that he's fatigued after the Wimbledon tournament. Understandably so, he lost in 5 sets in the final. It's more maybe mental fatigue than physical fatigue, but the 36-year-old Novak Djokovic not playing in the Canadian Open in Toronto in August. He won that tournament. It is Novak Djokovic. He won the Canadian Open 4 times in his career. That's international sports news for today. Hope you have a great sport day, and we talk international sport again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Africa, good morning on Wednesday, the 26th of July. These are the highlights from this morning's broadcast. Modern slavery gangmasters exploit care worker shortage. Slow disaster, Indonesians in sinking village forced to adapt. Outrage in Nigeria over Lagos mass burial. And Mozambique hopes to exit FATF grade list by H1 2024.
Those have been our stories. We thank you very, very much for watching our show on this beautiful Wednesday morning. Please be reminded that we welcome your remarks regarding our show. Post them on Twitter and Facebook. You can also watch this particular show on DSTV 285 and GoTV 25, as well as our website, which is called oneup2.com. On that note, it's all our love, all our light. Happy Wednesday.
Have a very, very good day. Sela Jakanaka.